Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Whether or Not. I'm Gavin Sandel, joined here with Maddie Olms. We're not in our element this week. We don't have the normal blue background behind us in the logo, smack dab right here, and that's because currently, as you guys are watching this, we're on our spring break, and Maddie, that means we have a lot of features going to be on this show.
Yeah, we'll be taking a look at the spring season upcoming. Matt will be touching on the spring bloom. Ben will be giving us a spring outlook, and Austin will even be touching on Wildfire Awareness Week.
Well, that sounds like a very interesting slate ahead. Let's get right into it, the spring outlook with Ben.
It's meteorological spring, which means it's time to look at the spring 2024 outlook. So looking at last spring, that's March through May, it was actually the 9th driest spring on record last year at 6.37 inches. That's over 4 inches of precipitation less than the climatological average. And in fact, our average temperature throughout the day was 49.8 degrees, which is actually 1 degree higher than the climatological average. And I would be completely remiss in saying that we did not have any big headlines. And the biggest headline for spring and into summer was that Canadian wildfire smoke intrusion across the entire country, really. So for this spring, I'm looking at El Nino still. I think it will begin weakening as we go throughout parts of spring, especially in April and into May. But I think this overall steering will be reminiscent of El Nino. And speaking of that steering, this is what the typical forecast will look like for El Nino. Drier than average conditions across parts of the Midwest and into the Great Plains. Wetter than average, really extending from the East Coast all the way down into the Gulf and across parts of the southern tier. And warmer than average conditions across the West and North and parts of the Northeast. This red blob can be extended farther eastward, usually. So what am I looking at for this spring? I think the precipitation is not quite as reminiscent of El Nino as it should be. And that's just because of the weakening trend that we're seeing in parts of the Pacific. So I'm looking at possibly above average conditions across really the Northeast and into parts of the Great Plains, likely above average precipitation for parts of Florida and the southern tier of the country. Below average conditions are expected across the desert Southwest and into parts of the Intermountain West and Pacific Northwest. Temperatures, however, are expected to be much more reminiscent of El Nino, likely above average temperatures for Pennsylvania and really across the entire northern tier of the country. Near average conditions are expected for parts of the southern tier, not shaded in any color. So the spring forecast that I'm expecting are our average daily temperature should be about 1 to 4 degrees above normal. I do have a good chance of it being around average, so that's 1 degree above or below the climatological average, which is about 47 degrees. So certainly looking at a slightly warmer trend for this spring. And the precipitation, I'm expecting a lot more precipitation than last spring, especially. Our average is about 10 inches of rain, so I am expecting between 9 to 11 inches at a 40% odds, and above average at about 35%. That's 11 to 13 inches expected. So my key takeaways are our March through May is likely to be much warmer than average, and we're likely to see more precipitation than last spring especially. And El Nino may begin to fade, and a pattern change is possible late into spring and into parts of summer. Austin Long is up next with Wildfire Awareness.
Maddie, what are you doing?
I'm burning my homework.
Why are you doing that?
Well, I didn't need it anymore. I didn't know what else to do with it.
You shouldn't put those flames out into the earth like that.
Okay, well, what else should I do instead?
You should probably recycle it, but don't burn it. It's just going to start a problem.
All right, that's good to know.
That's why it's Wildfire Awareness Week.
Wildfire Awareness Week is dedicated to spreading information about preventing uncontrolled fires. The National Weather Service prides themselves on communicating the dangers and benefits of wildfires, hence the entire week being dedicated to this topic. A wildfire is simply a large, destructive fire that spreads quickly over woodland or brush. These fires are usually unplanned, although natural causes such as lightning strikes can ignite dry areas. Weather conditions like high temperatures and low humidity, wind, and drought can enhance the strength of wildfires. John Banghoff, a meteorologist at the NWS, has this to say regarding wildfire conditions.
So generally we're looking for dry air masses along with winds in generally the spring or the fall when the fuels are driest, and that's going to be the recipe for biggest concern for fire weather.
Most wildfires, however, are caused by humans. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, humans have caused 98.9% of all wildfires in Pennsylvania since 2002. These human-created fires have various reasons for happening, such as vehicles or machinery, cigarette butts, fireworks, or campfires. One main contribution is burning debris. A fire can start from burning loose debris in a dry or windy area where an ignited object connects to dry grass or brush, which in turn begins a whole series of unfortunate events. When it comes to burning debris, always burn in an area away from dry grass or brush. Avoid burning on dry or windy days and have the proper extinguishing items on hand, like a hose, rake, or shovel. Lastly, always make sure the fire is never unattended and is properly put out before leaving. Other causes, such as cigarette butts, vehicles and machinery, and campfires, also have similar preventative measures. Here's John again, reinforcing safety and prevention tips.
Just be smart, right? So it's don't be grilling. I mean, certainly doing burning, burn piles and things like that in your backyard. Be careful with those and keep an eye on the forecast. I want to encourage people to be careful with disposing of cigarette butts and doing a good job of holding onto your butts, as we say.
A main outcome of wildfires is the copious amounts of smoke they produce. In the summer of 2023, people along the East Coast saw this in full effect. Our very own Maddie Olms and Ben Iaia captured these pictures of the smoke invading New York City and State College. This smoke out was thanks to wildfires up in Canada. The fires managed to spread smoke through New York, Pennsylvania, and even down to Virginia. With smoke being present in such a large amount, this led to air quality issues, which made it unsafe to be outside. Wildfires are dangerous when they are uncontrolled and spread rapidly, but when controlled properly, it turns out they can benefit the environment. Prescribed fires are controlled by fire experts under specific weather conditions to not cause an uncontrolled fire. These controlled fires encourage new growth of vegetation, strengthen some plants already present, and maintain healthy forest ecosystems. With all the negatives associated with wildfires, the NWS created Wildfire Awareness Week in order to show the positives and negatives of wildfires. Safety is the number one priority when it comes to fires, and remember, only you can prevent wildfires. For Weather or Not, I'm Austin Long.
Maddie, how could you in your right mind light a fire that irresponsibly?
I really didn't realize it was that big of a problem until Austin shared everything about Wildfire Awareness Week.
That is true. There were a lot of very valuable and good lessons in that video. I do have to... Oh my god. I need to go upstairs to do my feature right now. Oh my goodness. That was quite the run, I have to tell you. But you know what? We're back here in the Campus Weather Service office right now. We're not in the studio yet. And I want to show you guys the laboratory, really, where everything is made right on this computer and this computer that you might not be able to see. But Premiere and all the graphics, where they come from, is all stored in this office. Alright, so the first thing I want to show you guys is the computer that actually has Max. And what is Max? It's a software that all meteorology students use. It's the industry standard. The forecasting graphics that you use and the extended forecast graphics that you see on TV, these are all created in Max. And it's very cool because it not only teaches us really stuff to do here, but it also is very good with professional development as well. So the next thing I want to show you guys in this office is a handy tool that's called Premiere. And it's what we use here, Whether or Not, for editing our videos. So if you can drag, do all this manipulation with your videos. Right now I have a Whether or Not from last semester pulled up, and it's very cool. You can just see everything that's going on in the video, but I think it's a very, very handy tool for us. We're now done with the 6th floor. Come with me to the promised land, Studio A. Alright, well, welcome down to the 5th floor in the Walker building. Right behind this door is where all the magic happens. Studio A. Let's go in. Welcome to Studio A. This is the grandest of all grand studios. First, we have the control room. And I want to show you there's a lot of intricate things that go on in here. This is the TriCaster, the thing that really controls all of the presets and functions. You have right now what we normally see on nature in the news here. And a lot of these buttons control which camera shot. So let's say I want to click on ME1. This is now the map. that normally a forecaster would be on. If you go on ME2, this is the desk shot, so there are a lot of very cool functions. This right here, this joystick is what controls the camera, and if you want to slide it, you can move it up, move it down, and you can control the position of the camera. Let's head into the actual studio now. Let's see what the real fruit of the tree is. See the nice desk, this is where we both sit at when we have our host and forecaster doing their spiel. Going this way, this is where the weather wall is, so the people doing nature in the news and the people also doing their forecast will be right here. Heading this way, I want to show you, I guess, the behind the scenes of it. This camera right here has, it's actually mirrored. So right here, this is where the actual screen is, but it mirrors up so you can see yourself while also looking into the camera. We have a couple of timers here, so our forecasts are timed. So when you see this number counting down, you always got to make sure to finish that forecast. Do not go below. And also just the suit display in the back. If in case you are missing any suits or ties or pants, you can just always consult with this back here. But really, this is the brunt of Studio A. This is where all the magic happens here at Weather or Not.
While this meteorological winter has had some above average temperatures, an early blooming season can be in store for this year. According to data from the USA National Phenology Network, data shows that trees and flowers are already blooming in the southern US a couple weeks ahead of their scheduled time. While this scene is more representative of winter, a notable change to more spring-like flowers and trees will be in store for the coming weeks. As meteorological spring arrives, trees will start to bloom across Pennsylvania quite soon due to temperature increases and sunnier days. But some trees will swell very shortly due to 2024's high temperatures. Trees convert carbon dioxide into sugar and energy for themselves through photosynthesis in the growing season. As these trees pollinate, they also attract insects. Pollen forms from these trees through the anthers of the stamen and is formed through flowering plants. There are some exceptions though, as climate change confuses the tree cycle in the timeline due to fluctuating temperatures. Many tree types encounter varying blooming cycles. Blackthorn, cherry plum, and crabapple trees blossom a little later in the winter as pear apples blossom up until May. Redbuds, flowering pears, and ornamental cherry trees bloom in the early spring. Evergreen magnolia and crepe myrtle trees start the blooming process in the late spring and summer. The Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C., a highly celebrated occasion, brings much beauty to the District of Columbia. According to the National Park Service, the cherry blossom trees will peak in late March this year. While spring blooming can be a picturesque sight for many, it can help lead to seasonal allergies for many due to increased pollen levels as a result of a changing climate. As pollen lasts longer, allergy sufferers bear more in the way of symptoms. With above average temperatures expected to continue throughout March, it will cause many trees to pollinate and bloom fast. Meteorological spring has just started, so higher temperatures will help fuel that spring-like feel. For Whether or Not, I'm Matthew Howard.
Gavin, thank you so much for giving us a tour around Studio A. I'm sad we'll be missing it over spring break. Do you have any spring break plans?
It's actually a very good question. While you guys at home will be watching this, I'll probably be up in New England visiting some of my friends at their colleges. What about you?
I'll be heading to Disney World with my roommate. I'm excited for the higher temperatures down in Florida.
Oh, that's awesome. It's the place of magic, Disney World, and I'm sure, the temperatures will be much higher than here in State College.
Absolutely. And speaking of higher temperatures, that reminds me of our Weather Whiz Quiz question this week. The question this week is, what is the highest recorded temperature in March in State College? Is it A, 79 degrees, B, 82 degrees, C, 84 degrees, or D, 86 degrees? If you guess D, 86 degrees, you would be correct.
Wow, and that happened, I believe, all the way back in 1907, so we haven't had a high temperature like that in over 100 years.
Quite a bit of time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to tonight's show. We will be back next week with another edition of Whether or Not.